All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. And I'm here, I am ready, I'm excited to talk about points per game, everybody's favorite topic here. So many narratives, discussion points, topics, things like that. They ultimately, a lot of times, come down to the simplest metrics and the simplest things. Like last year, Nikola Jokic nearly averaged 30 points per game. He didn't quite get there, while Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had, I think, over 32 points per game. And it was one of the reasons there that Shai ultimately won the MVP over Jokic when, despite that, Jokic clearly had like 13 rebounds, 10 assists. He was unbelievable, obviously had massive thing like advantages over in those other categories than somebody like Shai, but he had less points, fewer points, and ultimately, I think that said to a lot of people, okay, maybe Shai's the best player, the best scorer in the league, things like that, and it's one of the reasons why he got it. It's not the only reason, and I think the NBA audience has gotten a little smarter, certainly to a degree that you can talk about different things with people without having to resort like just go back to points per game. But it is something that I find interesting, and I'm kind of wanting to talk about it through the prism of the Nuggets and their rotation and who the roles are going to be divvied out to and how many responsibilities guys are going to be getting. And maybe this is kind of a frame for who's going to play, who's going to be most impactful for the Nuggets, at least from a scoring perspective. So, a couple segments here. First segment, we're going to talk about the starters. Second segment, we're going to talk about the bench. And then at the end of it, I will go over an actual prediction for who I think is going to average the most points per game and exactly how many points per game every single player in the Nuggets rotation is going to average this upcoming season is my prediction. We can go back to it. I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of where this ends up and who's going to be kind of focused on different things and how close I am to reality, but it is going to be a fun assignment. So without further ado, let's talk about the starters and kind of my framing for what I wanted to do here. Obviously, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon. Those are your 5 starters that are going to be for the Nuggets this year. And the way I wanted to frame it through the starters, they're going to spend a lot of time together. They're going to spend a lot of time on the court. What's the pecking order going to look like? Jokic last year had the highest usage rate on the team, 29.5%. Next highest was Jamal Murray at 24%. Then you had Michael Porter at 20.2, Aaron Gordon at 19, and Christian Brown at 15.8. A large drop off for Christian Brown. He was out there a lot of time, though. He was a complimentary piece. First season as a starter, obviously he was going to have a pretty low usage rate, but that was a higher usage rate than guys like KCP in the past. So Christian was very much a part of what the Nuggets were trying to do from a scoring perspective. Now, Cam Johnson obviously is not Michael Porter. He averaged a 21.3% usage rate while he was in Brooklyn. Michael Porter in Denver this last year was at 20.2. I think that's about what you're going to get from Cam Johnson. I would be surprised if Cam Johnson averaged higher of a usage rate than he did in Brooklyn. He'll stagger, of course. He'll definitely be in a situation where the Nuggets can try to feature him a little bit, but they also have other options. They have guys that I think they're going to want to get the ball to as well. And Cam's not the guy that I think you force feed possessions to. So he'll get some shots, but I think it's probably going to be about what Michael Porter was at with about 20%. Highest efficiency, which is kind of the other side of the coin with usage and efficiency that helps you kind of figure out how many points per game you're actually going to get. Jokic was the most efficient, then Brown, then Johnson and Gordon, and then Murray. Murray, the lowest efficiency of those starters. I want to frame it like this, though. Since coming from the ACL tear, Jamal Murray was at 58% true shooting over the course of the last 3 seasons. That is not a bad number, especially when you consider the shot difficulty, the points that he's creating for other people with the attention that he's taking, his connection with Jokic, things like that. Now, you want to make sure that you're not amping up that usage too much with Jamal if the true shooting is going to be around that number. I do think that you want, like, if you're going to try to make the offense as efficient as possible, you want to continue to feature guys like Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown. But here are the actual true shootings kind of that I was measuring over the course of these past few years. Jokic is far and away the most efficient Nugget, even over Christian Brown, just over the course of a large chunk of time. 66.3 true shooting percentage over the last 5 years for Jokic. That's incredible. Then Jamal was at 58% since coming back from the ACL tear. Cam Johnson, as a starter in his entire career, is at 61.5%. He's more of a support player. He's somebody that doesn't have to create with the ball in his hands a ton, but he has been doing it more often of late, and he had a really efficient season this last year. So it would not surprise me if he stepped up to the plate and did some good things with the ball in his hands going forward, especially when you've got Jokic and Murray and other guys that can take some attention off of you off ball. Aaron Gordon, while in Denver, his role has changed so much that it's hard to measure what the true shooting percentage is going to look like and how efficient he's actually going to be. Like, he's gone from a guy who hangs out in the dunker spot, who has an occasional three-pointer, who is mostly going to try to take wide open shots, to somebody who's now taking fadeaways with consistency. He's now like pulling up in transition for three and has actually been very good at it. 61.2% for true shooting for Gordon in Denver. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be about there. Like, whether it's going to be more of an off the dribble game or if it's going to be more like just catching lobs from Jokic, things like that. I think you're probably at about 61% there. And then Christian Brown, I was hesitant to just say what his number was this past year, which was, I think, 66, 67% by itself. He led the NBA in true shooting. He was fantastic over the course of this last year from an efficiency standpoint. However, I kind of think that's going to change this year for a couple reasons. Not just because it's regression, although there is some of that built in, but because he's going to take tougher shots at times. Like, you want to see him develop. You want to see him continue to expand his game so that when the playoffs come around and he's asked to do some more difficult things, he's more comfortable doing it. In order to do that, though, you have to go through the trials and tribulations. You have to go through the down period in order to experience the highs later. So I do think that the best thing for Denver, get him to take some tougher shots, more additional threes, not just the shots kind of off of cuts from Jokic, or like they're running two-man game and he does a backdoor, things like that, or he's in transition just sprinting at the opposing team. But last season he was at 66, 67%. If you just do the last two seasons, he's still at 62.4, which is the second highest on that starting five, but it's not quite to the degree of separation that it was just last year. So now just going kind of more points per game focused. Jokic over the last 5 years has averaged 26.8 points per game. Last year he was at 29.6, had his highest usage season. Actually, that's not his highest usage. That was 2021-22. But in terms of the minute per game load and just being out there on a consistent basis, it was the highest combination of true usage and minute total. So, like, I don't think it's going to drop all the way back down. Well, actually, it might. Like, there's some takes that I have about how many points he's actually going to average this year. Next, Jamal Murray, 21 points per game over the last 3 years. That's about where it's going to be. That's about where I'm going to predict him. Cam Johnson in Brooklyn, it's only 16.1 points per game. I kind of think it stays or even goes a little bit higher than that. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if just the opportunities that he gets with Denver, the opportunities that he gets with other people, with the starters and with the bench, he will be featured in some ways. It's not going to be like first option Cam, but it's going to be pretty good. And then Aaron Gordon, 14.6 points per game while he was with Denver. Last year, he was at 14.7. He's had years where he's been lower. He's had years where he's been higher. I'm not sure what to make of it. I kind of think it'll be about there, maybe a little bit better if we're going kind of on the perspective of he's going to be a featured option. And if he's healthier than like the reports are getting, he looks really good As long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be above that 14.6 number. And then Christian Brown, here's how I measured what I thought his a kind of estimation for points per game should be. 14.1 points per game in his career when playing 25 plus minutes. Last year, he played out of the 77, 79 games or so that he played, only 3 of them were games that he played fewer than 25 minutes. I don't think he's going to be at that 33 to 36 range from a minutes perspective like he's been over the course of last year. Denver's got more depth, especially at the shooting guard position. There should be more reasons to be able to rest Christian. He doesn't necessarily have to play that heavy 32 to 36 minute per game role on a consistent basis. There might be opportunities where Bruce Brown should play, or where Tim Hardaway should play, or Julian Strother, or Peyton Watson, or whoever kind of that's not in the starting lineup. So I think when you're playing 25 plus minutes, that's still a reasonable number to consider. But just know that last year, Christian, I think, averaged 15.4 points per game. It might go down, and he might still be just fine. I'm not concerned about if that number goes down for him, because it likely means that he's playing fewer minutes. And that's a really good thing for Denver. You do not just you want him to have a large role, and he deserves that large role. That's not what I'm saying. More of it is just about keeping him fresh, making sure he's at his best and peaking in the playoffs, as opposed to kind of flagging because the Nuggets have had to play him so much this last year. By the way, according to FanDuel, Nikola Jokic, all the way down to plus 310 in the MVP odds. I'm kind of surprised by that. He's been kind of neck and neck with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over the course of these past couple months. He's been like plus 200, plus 250, but he's kind of dropping a little bit to plus 310. Very interesting that the MVP odds are shifting away from Nikola. Maybe that's in part because they're expecting lower scoring. I am too, but I'm expecting better assists than ever for Nikola Jokic going forward. When we come back, we are going to discuss the bench unit, and I'm going to try to project how many points I actually think these guys are going to score here next on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. One of the questions that I had posed in the topics list, will anyone ever challenge Jokic at the top of the scoring list for Denver? Because nobody really has. The last time that it was any close was back in 2019-20 or so, where he averaged about 20 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists per game. But then after that, he really took off. And so over the course of the last 5 years, he's averaged about 26, 27 points per game, some higher, some lower. Will there ever be somebody that kind of averages that many, kind of in that either the 26 point per game range, or Jokic drops down to about 24 like he was in 2022-23, but because somebody else has jumped up? I don't really expect it. And I was seeing some of this narrative on Twitter, actually. It is not just because the guys on Denver are worse than he is, that he is an elite, unbelievable scorer. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the style of offense that the Nuggets like to play, where they run everything through Jokic, it is very equal opportunity, where guys read the floor, they give up cuts, sometimes they cut and it allows other people to kind of space behind them. And Jokic is just going to make the right play. He's never forcing it to somebody else or feeling like he has to get it to Murray or has to get it to Porter or anything like that. Now, it doesn't even have to do that for Porter. It's just going to be Cam Johnson. Cam's just going to fill in. If Cam takes a smaller role than Michael Porter, and let's say Christian Brown kind of really settles into his role, is more like 3-and-D oriented as opposed to just a slasher, it wouldn't surprise me if Murray did balloon up at least a little bit in terms of those numbers. The other thing being Denver doesn't have a traditional backup point guard. So there is at least an opportunity for Murray, if he were to be in some of those bench lineups where he continues to stagger with that second unit. One of the factors that Denver's not going to have to worry about this year, like Jamal's going to have the ball in his hands a lot, and Denver's not going to have to try to figure out where to put Russell Westbrook or other guys while Jamal has the ball. Like, as long as Bruce Brown is spacing the floor reasonably well, he'll be out there and he can play off the ball reasonably well. Russ had a really good shooting year last year for Denver in the regular season, but it wasn't necessarily about that. It was about whether he's going to be guarded or not. So, and a lot of teams just gave it up. Like, there were so many times where people are doubling off of Russell Westbrook and he's shooting shots from the corner and he's hitting them a lot, but that wasn't necessarily like it. The double was still coming. That's more of what I'm trying to say. So we'll see what happens and what Jamal's actual scoring looks like going forward, but it wouldn't surprise me if it goes up. There is just kind of this meme that he's probably going to stay at about 20, 21, 22 points per game for the rest of his career. And if he does, and if he's just playing really well and the Nuggets are having a 130 offensive rating while he's out there just running the show next to Jokic, then it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, you also want other guys to be able to shine. You want Cam Johnson to be able to get the opportunities that he needs to get. Aaron Gordon can go off. Christian Brown has shown the ability to score 20 plus on a relatively consistent basis when he gets shot opportunities. So it's not a traditional, here's the first option, here's the definitive second option, here's the definitive third option, and then like it drops off a cliff. Denver's more equal opportunity, in part because of who Jokic is as a player. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's very important to kind of the ethos of the Nuggets that everybody feels like they're involved. But as a result, guys like Murray, guys like Porter in the past have often given up touches as a result. So not the worst thing in the world. I think it's perfectly fine in Denver. I think we'll benefit from it. Okay. Going to the bench. By the way, Jokic doing a lot of stuff for Team Serbia. I had mentioned that Serbia was 28.5 favorites, 28.5 point favorites on FanDuel over Estonia tomorrow in their first Eurobasket matchup. That number is all the way up to 31.5. 31.5 point favorites in a tournament against another country. That's a significant gap. The way that Serbia's played obviously has played a part in that, but I think everybody's expecting Serbia to dominate, and I'm looking forward to being able to talk about it on certainly Wednesday night when I record, and then you'll probably see that episode on Thursday. Okay, let's get to the bench here. Couple main questions here. Who's going to lead the bench in points per game? And then we'll rank the entire roster on points per game, or at least the top kind of 12 or so guys after that. Estimations for the bench. Here's kind of how I got to where I wanted to get, because if you noticed for the starters, I kind of had some different methodology in terms of how I'm thinking about it, how you can estimate it. With Valanciunas, I didn't want to have a whole bunch of games where he was starting, kind of be the basis for estimating stuff. So basically, I took last year's numbers from him, his points per game number, but cut out the 5 30-minute performances that he had, where he was out there for 30 plus minutes. There will be times where he plays that number of minutes for Denver when Jokic doesn't play, but I'm not expecting that to be often. So I would expect him to be like his points per game number when you cut out those 5 30 plus minute per game performances was 9.5 points per game. If he averaged that, that's not bad. DeAndre Jordan last year averaged like 4. So getting 9.5 points per game from your backup center, that would be huge, huge for Denver. Bruce Brown, last 3 seasons was the way that I averaged it. You've obviously got the 2022-23 year with Denver, but then you want to factor in who he was in each of the last couple of spots that he's landed on, because he was a starter in one of those situations. He was a bench guy in a couple of the other situations. So over the course of those 3 seasons, 10.6 points per game for Bruce Brown. He's obviously going to be out there for defense, but he's a great cutter. He's somebody who runs in transition. He's going to hit some spot up threes. He's going to throw up the floater at times. Like, he'll have plenty of opportunities for point scoring. The question is, will it be more than other guys? 10.6 is higher than 9.5 for Valanciunas. Tim Hardaway Jr. is an interesting one, because the role that he's going to play for Denver is different from the one that he's played for Detroit and then Dallas the few years prior. He played a very high volume scoring role for Dallas in those years. The usage that he had in Detroit was a little bit more requisite, but he only he played 28 minutes. So Over the course of the last 3 seasons, he's averaged, kind of in the 12 to 13 point per game range. If you reduce those 28 minutes down to 20 minutes per game, I have him at about 9.3 points per game. So you've got Bruce at 10.6, you've got Valanciunas at 9.5, Tim Hardaway at 9.3 in terms of the estimates. That seems reasonable. Peyton Watson last year averaged 8.1 points per game. Is that number going to go up? Is it going to go down? The funny thing is that he played a fair amount of time, but he had the lowest usage rate on the team last year. And based off of like who you would want taking shots, who you would want being involved in the offense, it does make sense. Like he still has the lower ceiling for the other guys offensively. But I do think that he's going to get those opportunities naturally, in part because of the cutting offense that Denver runs. And also, like, they're going to want him out there a lot for the defense because you look at the roster, there's not a lot of great defenders on the team. So you want some athleticism there. You want some defensive capability there. And so Watson's going to get some opportunities. So over his career, he's averaged 8.3 points per game, actually 8.3 points per 36 minutes. When you divide, actually, here, my mistake. He has averaged higher than that, but when you cut the per 36 for his career down to 24 minutes per game and you just adjust for about 24 minutes per game, he's at about 8.3 points per game. I know that's confusing. I should probably have put these up on the screen. Sorry. Now, Julian Strawther. I've talked about 4 other guys before getting to Julian Strawther. You know, Julian averaged 9 points per game last year. That's pretty high. I was kind of surprised looking at that. They were involving him pretty consistently. There were times where he went up and was very consistent and had some really good numbers. There are also times where he didn't make anything and played about 10 minutes and then sat. There are going to be those consistent opportunities going forward, or maybe they're not. Over the course of his 2 years in his career, he's averaged 7.1 points per game in about 16.8 minutes per game. I think bumping that up to about 7.5 just because of the efficiency, like his efficiency will rise in this like third year of his career as opposed to the first and second. That's what my expectation would be. So 7.5 points per game sounds about right for Julian Strawther. And now you're out of the top 10 and you're not necessarily sure who's going to play beyond that. Deron Holmes will play. He'll get some run. I do not think he's going to be a point scorer. I think he's more going to be about, he'll get some cuts. He'll get some rolls to the rim. He'll get some transition opportunities if he gets out there. He'll get some offensive rebounds, things like that. But that amounts to about 5 points per game in my mind. That's my guess. And then Zeke Naji is the 12th guy that I'm going to talk about because you've got Jalen Pickett after that, who he might play, who knows, and then Hunter Tyson, who I do not think will play. Those are the final 2 guys on the roster. We'll say that Jalen Pickett averages about 4 points per game, and Hunter Tyson's closer to like 2. He's not going to get a lot of opportunities, but he will get some in garbage time. So Zeke Naji, he averages 4.2 career points per game. We'll keep it there. 4.2. He's going to play more power forward this year than he has in some previous seasons. And I do think that that will make a difference just in terms of how often he's going to get to play next to Jokic, next to Valanciunas, guys like that. He's not going to get opportunities all the time, but those guys will take up attention. And as a result, Naji will get shots in better situations than maybe he had as a center. Also, he should get some garbage time. There will be plenty of garbage time to have, and he'll probably play backup center in a lot of those minutes. Him and Deron Holmes will get some run there. So that's 12 guys. Final point per game rankings as I have it right now. I'm going to estimate that Nikola Jokic averages 26.5 points per game. And you might be thinking, Ryan, what are you doing? He averaged 29.6 points per game last year. I think this is by necessity, where he doesn't like to average that many points per game. He would much rather average assists. He would much rather get other people involved. The Nuggets as a whole would like to get his minutes down. I think there are some factors that are going to prevent him, not prevent, because he could do it if he wanted to, but he's going to want to average fewer points than he had in 24-25. How many fewer? That remains to be seen. It kind of depends on how involved and how ready to go guys like Jamal Murray, Cam Johnson, and the other starters are going to be. But I have Jokic, 26.5 points per game. We're going to keep Jamal Murray at 21 points per game. I think that's about where it should be, about where it's like clearly the second option on the team. Clearly, other guys can get involved, but Murray is going to be the guy that they're going to rely on. He's entering the first year of that max contract. That's going to be like they're going to want to trust him. They're going to want to give those opportunities to see how much he can handle at times. Cam Johnson, 17 points per game. That seems about right. He, like I had before, he was at 16.1 points per game while he was in Brooklyn, but he's now better. Like I think he averaged 18.8 in his final year in Brooklyn. So he's going to average fewer than that in Denver, I think. I don't think he's going to challenge Murray. There are some people that do. I don't think that that's the case. Cam Johnson's probably going to average about 17 points per game in Denver, at least in his first season. Aaron Gordon, going to bounce back and get up to 15 points per game. Not going to quite be at that 16, 17 point per game threshold that he's been in the past, but I don't think he needs to be. I think Denver's very much okay if he is taking that fourth option role player style, jack of all trades kind of player where he's got some defensive responsibilities. He's got some more rebounding responsibilities this year. There's going to be some reasons why he's not averaging more than 15 points per game, but I think that's about where it should be. And then Christian Brown, 14.5 points per game is where I have him now. He was at 15.4 the year before. I do think that goes down. I think that's you're going to see some drops. You're going to see some drops across the board. Jokic is averaging about 3 points per game fewer. Cam Johnson averaging about 1 point fewer than Michael Porter was. Aaron Gordon's close to the same, maybe slightly higher, but Christian Brown is a 1 point fewer. And then Bruce Brown, who I think is going to be their sixth man, 10.5 points per game, which is fewer than what Russell Westbrook was averaging last year at 13.3. So Ryan, what gives? Why are you doing this? It's because of the depth. Last year, Denver had 8 guys that were averaging at least 8 points per game. Peyton Watson was 8th at 8.1. Julian Strawther was 7th at 9.0. But then the drop-off happened, and DeAndre Jordan, I think, was next at 9th on the team at points per game at like 4, somewhere around there. It was very low. I think it's going to be different this year. So I had Christian Brown at 14.5 in 5th. Bruce Brown is at 10.5 in 6th. Jonas Valanciunas at 7th, 9.5. Tim Hardaway Jr. will be 8th. I have him at 9.0. Peyton Watson, I have at 8.0. He's in 9th. So he'll be about the same, but he's the 9th player in Denver's rotation as opposed to the 8th in terms of scoring load from this last year. Julian Strawther will be behind him. I think his role is going to change the most because of Tim Hardaway Jr.'s presence. He's going to drop to about 7.5. He might be higher, like depending on how he improves, and maybe there are some things like maybe he just gets better and maybe he and Tim Hardaway Jr. swap. That's also a possibility. There's a possibility that Strawther just continues to balloon as a scorer and they like to continue to feature him, and he even replaces Bruce Brown in terms of the expectation that you're going to get from a points perspective. But I think for right now, I feel safest projecting Strawther as about 10th in Denver's points per game because I think it's most likely that he is going to take a backseat to the other veterans that are arriving. But I could be wrong about that. Who knows? Like we'll see what ultimately happens. And then Deron Holmes, I have at 5, and Zeke Naji, I have at 4. Jalen Pickett, I have at about 3 or 4. And then Hunter Tyson, I have at about 2. So that's my list. That is what I have for point per game rankings. I will post this on social media. Maybe I'll even post it in the description at some point, or maybe in one of the comments when the show comes out. But either way, that's where I have Denver from a points per game standpoint. If that is disappointing to some people, don't be worried because Denver's depth is going to be exceedingly helpful. Just having players that you can go to and know that they can give you 2 buckets and a half, 3 buckets and a half, 5 buckets in a game, somewhere around there is such a big deal. And having the variety to know that, hey, Christian Brown's having an off night, you don't have to play him. You don't have to close. Like he can go 2 of 6 in a game and it's not going to be the end of the world because you've got Bruce Brown coming off the bench giving you 15, 5, and 5 in one of those games. Or if it's Deron Holmes, who's stepping up in place of an injured Aaron Gordon. Like Deron Holmes could give you 10 points. He could start. Absolutely. He could start in place of those guys and just, you don't have to even change the rotation that much. You just play him in those starting minutes, see where it goes. And there's absolutely no reason why he can't fill in, or Peyton Watson, same thing. Tim Hardaway Jr., same thing. There's so many opportunities for those guys, much more so than last year's team for Denver, which was just 9 real guys, which actually turned out to be 8. Like it's not good enough. So Denver's got, I think, 10 real guys this year, and they're actually real. We'll see whether that changes. Maybe that even goes up to 11 if Deron Holmes can prove that he can really play. Maybe it's Zeke Naji, who steps into a different position and is just more comfortable in his 6th season in the NBA. We'll find out together, but that was my ranking, and let me know what you disagree with the most. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys on Thursday.